Well, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be watching this video. Today is a special day. We have Hugo Philion and other members of the Flare team with us here to discuss a few things about Flare 2.0. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Stephen, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Yeah. Hugo, you want to introduce who we have from the team real quick before I start firing off some questions for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I'm Hugo, co-founder of Flare. We've got Dinesh, who's in product engineering. We have Drove, who is our DeFi lead, and we have Philip, who is head of DeFi.
Awesome. So, I'm really curious, what is the core vision behind Flare 2.0 and how does it shape Flare's role in the blockchain space?
So Flare 2.0 is the first. Well, we released the first part of Flare 2.0 as a blog a couple of weeks ago, and Flare 2.0 is really about how we take blockchain to the next level. If you use blockchain dApps today, you will know that they are extremely prohibitive in their functionality. And really the key plank of what we're trying to achieve with Flare 2.0 is to enable applications built on the blockchain to be far richer in terms of the functionality they offer to users, whether those users are institutional or retail. So for institutional, far more financial tooling. For retail, things like GameFi, SocialFi, and just better financial applications. So that's the basis behind Flare 2.0. And the first part we're releasing, the first subject of the blog, is what we call protocol managed wallets. And this is effectively allows us to extend Flare's consensus onto other blockchains. We can get into how that works in a minute, but in short, it allows an output, it allows a wallet on another blockchain to be controlled by an output on Flare. And an output on Flare can be highly sophisticated because Flare not only has a smart contract engine in the EVM, it also has data in its core Flare data protocols, the FTSO and the FTC. So Flare can get data from other blockchains, it can get data from Web 2, it can get data from Web 3. That data can be processed in a smart contract on Flare, and it can the consensus over what has happened in that dApp can then be used to make a transaction on another blockchain. And this opens up really quite a sophisticated set of things that can then be built on Flare.
Awesome. So I've got a question with that. And a lot of people, I guess, when you say Flare 2.0 versus 1.0, some people kind of think, oh, they're rewriting code or they're doing all this. And that's not exactly the case, as more as it's some architectural add-on and some adjustments. So could you kind of, highlight exactly what the gap difference is, what you're calling 1.0 versus 2.0 to kind of help people better understand what that entails?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're not rewriting core Flare code. Flare 1.0 is Flare, the smart contract engine, the blockchain with its two data protocols, the FTC, the Flare Data Connector, which allows us to connect Web 3 and Web 2, and the FTSO, Flare Time Series Oracle, which allows us to get prices. That's Flare 1.0. Flare 2.0 builds on Flare 1.0 by adding, to start with, protocol managed wallets, which allow dApps on Flare to execute transactions on other chains directly. And then the second part of Flare 2.0, it's going to be heavily focused on bringing large amounts of compute to the chain in a safe and secure way so that people can build applications that are just much better than available anywhere else.
Awesome. So your blog, you just mentioned it, expanding Flare consensus across chains, got a lot of attention. So can you tell us a little bit more about it?
The expanding Flare's consensus to other chains. Okay, let's try and break down what that means. At the moment, blockchains are broadly, they're isolated. Of course, there are bridges between chains, but they're kind of limited in what you can do. So you have an application on a chain, and that application really that allows you to do things on that chain. at the moment, it's very hard for that application, for instance, to do things on another chain. As I said, there are message passing services, but it's kind of a difficult way to build applications. You have to put a smart contract on one chain and another smart contract on another chain that knows what is happening, and can essentially settle. What Flare 2.0 and Protocol Managed Wallet allows us to do is essentially a smart contract on Flare can process something that results in an outcome. And let me give you a sort of simple example. You might have a protocol managed wallet that is holding wrapped Bitcoin on a network like Ethereum. Holding wrapped Bitcoin, doesn't matter which variant of wrapped Bitcoin. Let's just say it's holding wrapped Bitcoin. And you have a protocol on Flare that allows something to happen. Let's say me and you have a bet over the price of Bitcoin on Flare. And let's say you win that bet. You're right. Now the protocol managed wallet effectively, based on the output of that bet in the smart contract on Flare, can now pay you using that protocol managed wallet directly. It can pay you that Bitcoin that you just won from me. So that is an example of how easy we're making it for basically people to build applications on Flare that can control funds elsewhere simply through consensus. No sort of need for extended message passing, lots of contracts on lots of chains, just an application on Flare that basically can hold funds on other chains and do things with those funds based on what has happened in Flare's consensus.
Awesome. Now, will this? How will this affect the FTSOs? Like, are they going to have to do more, less? What is it? What does that type of new change do to them?
So they don't have to do more. We already have a protocol that is part of one of the core protocols of Flare, called the FSP, the Flare Systems Protocol. This allows us to aggregate signatures for things off-chain. And what this allows us to do is to aggregate the signatures of Flare off-chain, as in the consensus bit. So an application that refers to a protocol managed wallet that has a state transition and when it wants to make a transaction using the protocol managed wallet. And our validators just sign that as part of a normal FSP round. And that set of signatures goes to a set of TEEs, which then enables that transaction to happen on Flare. So there's no necessary additional work for our validators. Of course, we'd like to bring our validators into the system, have them running TEEs that enable this, but that's a longer term process.
Gotcha. Awesome. I understand that. I haven't quite figured all those out. This is all processed. So let's move on to kind of what do you think the key benefits are, real world use cases for Flare? Like what I like to call low hanging fruit or easy wins you've spotted.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a huge opportunity, as we've always been building for bridging. I think we're focused very heavily on XRP staking, and of course Bitcoin, because it's such a large source of value. So those are the easiest wins, and those are coming through fairly soon with F assets. But the next easy win is staking for XRP, which will use the protocol managed wallets, use the F assets V2, which will be a protocol managed wallet based protocol, to enable XRP holders to stake their XRP to AVSs, actively validated services, which then they can get a yield from that actively validated service paid in that actively validated service token, which for the first time allows XRP to be used as security for another network, and in return getting a yield. So that's super low hanging fruit. But then the really interesting aspect of where I want to take this is, if we combine Flare, protocol managed wallets, and off-chain compute, what can we do? So we've obviously seen the AI kit has been built on Flare. We've got already a protocol on Flare that is transcribing Twitter Spaces. That's a real world use case.
Awesome.
Don't know how it gets monetized yet, but it's a very interesting use case. Then how else do we use compute? Well, I'm very interested in using compute to build more sophisticated financial products. Kind of hinted at it yesterday on one of the spaces, which is, I'm very interested in how can we extend margin across various different blockchains to various different people participating in DeFi. I'm interested in how you use off-chain compute to integrate blockchains with traditional finance. There's some people working on various things around Flare on that. So there's quite a lot of aspects to this.
Yeah, you say that because obviously I was listening to the call yesterday, and you mentioned how nothing moves without TradFi, and how there's easy avenues to really pick up and help use those avenues for Flare. So what would need to be accomplished to get to that?
Well, I think one of the things that sort of I find a bit of a shame at the moment is that TradFi are only focusing on stablecoins. They're not yet focusing on how they expand finance to a decentralized format, and I think that's very interesting. So one of the things that if you're a TradFi entity, you have a limited sort of set of people you can do business with. You've got to onboard them, you've got to KYC them, you've got to AML them. You've got to, if you're based in New York, you have a certain set of relationships. So if you're based in London, you have a certain set of relationships. The thing that blockchain gives you is the ability to distribute financial products globally at a very, very low overhead. And I want to see that used a lot more. And I think that will come, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take large amounts of compute.
Gotcha.
So Hugo, I have a question for you. What is needed for launching a new token on Flare, like to bridge it from or to Flare?
To bridge it from or to Flare. Well, we're building the FASFP2 using protocol managed wallet. That is going to take in XRP, possibly other coins on the XRP ledger, Bitcoin and Dogecoin. In terms of adding a new coin to that, we haven't really thought that far ahead. It's a possibility, but yeah, talk to us when you have a coin you want us to add.
All right, yeah. I mean, real quick, without going too much, there's a Mexican peso stable coin, and I think you're going to be able to mint directly from your bank account, like pretty soon. So I would be like, okay, that would be a very interesting. They have it on Solana, XLM, and Base. So
okay, well, if it's on XLM, well, Solana and Base, I mean, that could potentially be bridged through Stargate anyway. We just be straightforward. We're not trying to build every possible bridge that could be built. We don't want to compete in the bridging space. We just think that the bridging solutions for non-smart contract tokens, Bitcoin, XRP, Dogecoin, are pretty weak, and we think we have a better method to do it. We're not interested in building bridges between Ethereum L2s, Solana, all that kind of stuff. That's the preserve of specific bridge businesses, like the biggest, or pretty much the biggest, Stargate and Layer Zero. So if something can be bridged to Stargate and Layer Zero, we would recommend that. If it's only on XRP ledger, we're very interested in bringing it to Flare, and then from Flare, either it stays on Flare in its DeFi protocols, or it moves to other chains and can be used to those DeFi protocols through Stargate.
Thank you.
Awesome. So yesterday in that call, you were talked about machine learning as a service, and I don't know how many people caught that, but obviously most of you guys are machine learning experts. So, would you like to kind of expand on that at all? Never like machine learning as a service. That sounds interesting.
Well, I don't think I meant machine learning as a service. Obviously, we have Flare AI Kit that has a certain set of things it's going to do with regards to being able to run machine learning models in trusted execution environments. That is, that's sort of the domain of verifiable artificial intelligence. You can verify that the model you're using is the model you think you're using. You can verify the parameters, all those kind of things. And this is useful if you're handing over money to an AI agent to be able to make sure that it is, in fact, the model you thought you were handing over money to, and that the model hasn't been changed and is now just a human who has control of your funds. So being able to verify that you are, in fact, using an AI model is the first leg of Flare AI Kit. But we have some thoughts around how artificial intelligence itself can be made better through decentralization, through many entities coming to contribute to a single prediction from an AI model. And we put out a small, very brief paper on that last year called Consensus Learning, and we've been fleshing that out ever since.
Oh yeah, I read the paper. It was quite intensive. I had to have AI break it down for me. So why would institutions or builders pick Flare over established brands with bigger market shares or liquidity? Because liquidity obviously is a big thing for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, firstly, I think we're growing liquidity quite nicely. Our TBL is going up, our daily volume's going up. So that's a starting point. But when I talk to institutions, they're really interested in data. They're interested in secure data because they have this interesting issue whereby if they release a product, they have essentially a legal duty towards that product. So they want they want data that they can be confident is real. And only Flare provides data in a really decentralized way. There are other oracles, but only Flare brings together 100 data providers, all with stake to provide that data. And as Philip can tell you in a minute, we've made getting Web 2 data extremely easy on Flare. And that means that there's a whole bunch of use cases that are not served by existing oracles that we can serve and they can't. And so that's really the big hook for institutions.
Awesome. So out of curiosity, how do you guys decide, when is a good time to innovate versus when is a good time to use existing tech? What kind of goes into that?
Well, I mean, our primary innovations have been around data, and now around how you can control funds on other chains. And our lens through which we see this is simply: are we adding to the net decentralization of the system? So when we looked at oracles when we started, we didn't think they were decentralized, and they still aren't. And if they're not decentralized, then that gives you a large amount of risk that can occur at some point, because we see all the time in the real world that if something can be done that can upset a market very heavily to the benefit of a player or a small set of players, then that very often is done. And that's the problem with centralization. And so we always think through the lens of, is it worth building this protocol? Do you end up with something better? And that's where we put our chips.
Oh, love that. So were you inspired by any specific developments in or outside crypto?
With regards to Flare 2.0?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, firstly, we want to find a better way to do bridging of XRP, Bitcoin, and Doge, better even than F assets V1. And this is a better way. And then secondly, we think that Flare has all this data from other chains, from Web 2, from Web 3. How do we put that to use? We can put that to use by turning Flare into a protocol hub, whereby a protocol can sit on Flare, can ingest data from all these places, and can then take actions elsewhere.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay, so can we move a little bit to DeFi? Thanos, step by step, can you give us a quick rundown of how Flare has built its DeFi stack, please?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a really good way about thinking about DeFi is taking a look at other ecosystems and understanding fundamentally how specific dApps rely on other dApps. And looking at the evolution of other DeFi ecosystems generally gives you what a roadmap for building out DeFi on Flare looked like for us. Um, and so if you look at Ethereum, one of the first major breakthrough dApps was Uniswap, right? That was the Uniswap V1, like the full range of liquidity that you would add. Then it slowly progressed to V3 with concentrated liquidity, and then now V4 with like hooks and like the Uniswap chain coming out. And so DEXs specifically are essentially the foundational piece of any single DeFi ecosystem. So when I came on board, I spoke to Enosis, I spoke to BlazeSwap, thought about how we wanted to scale, and then also brought in SparkDex there as well to help just to help the DEX ecosystem more broadly on Flare today. So generally, we started with the DEX. That's how most ecosystems start. They have their core DEX that is the liquidity hub of almost all trading. From there, you can then build lending protocols on top of that. Those lending protocols, specifically for us, has been Kinetic. Need a DEX beneath it with enough liquidity to ensure that users can exit position safely and that the liquidator can exit position safely. So Kinetic then was added on top, and then we've introduced perps. And now that we have lending, borrowing, we have the DEX beneath it, and we now have perps. We can now start looking towards more esoteric builds. If you look at crypto as a whole this year, I think there's been a few breakthrough dApps I wouldn't say dApps, but use cases of finance and crypto specifically this year. Pendle was one of them. So the ability to split your YT and PT token, so your yield token and your principal token, which I find generally pretty interesting. And I would say these yield-bearing stablecoins, so like RWAs like Athena, were very popular amongst TradFi. So these are two things that we've mostly been looking at, thinking about how we want to grow our ecosystem, and mostly trying to align what the future of Flare is going to look like as for how we want to grow our DeFi ecosystem. And we want to ensure that product launches have the ability for institutions to come use Flare and have a seamless experience when doing that. And a lot of that is done by understanding what types of dApps and what types of trades that they'll put on and ensuring that they have the right rails for that.
Awesome. So how do you choose projects to work with? Like, what's your process to say, we'll go with this guys instead of this other project?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think with any partnership, you have to obviously consider like previous experience, where they're currently building or where they've previously built, what their reputation is like in the space, how they treat their users, what their approach to growth looks like, and then convincing them on the future of Flare, right? Ultimately, we want builders that are interested in the products that we are building and want to work with us, and are interested in Flare's long-term growth. And
Awesome.
to me, that's kind of the most important part. Yeah, I can go get the largest DEX, or let's say like a major DEX, but if they don't care about Flare, they're just not going to be very responsive and don't care about building custom solutions for things that we want.
Of course. So how will Flare 2.0 influence the future of DeFi?
Yeah, so I think there's a world of possibilities that we've been thinking about for Flare 2.0. I think that we at Flare are going to be able to do cross-chain stuff seamlessly. And how I think about that is that dApps specifically on Flare can access, let's say, liquidity across a bunch of different other chains. Or we have let's say, these custom built dApps that essentially allow people to access liquidity on other chains and then also participate on Flare as well. And so Flare 2.0, I think, just in its current state, unleashes just an unbelievable amount of possibilities and composability across many different chains, which all can aggregate value back to Flare.
Awesome. So, Hugo, this is for Hugo. What new DeFi use cases do you see emerging, and do you see any bigger than F assets?
Interesting question. So, what new DeFi use cases do I see emerging? First of all, we are going very heavily into XRP-Fi. We're starting with staking. Obviously, we're starting with F assets, but the principal product, it's going to be staking. And then, obviously, you've got when you have staked XRP, you have liquid staked XRP. And I suspect there's going to be a very healthy market between XRP and liquid staked XRP, DEXs, borrowing, those kind of markets. So that's the first thing that Flare 2.0 is going to enable. And I think, maybe that can be replicated for Bitcoin as well on Flare. I think that's an interesting possibility. But we're starting with XRP. That's our market. That's what we know. And, as we prove that product, we'll think about adding more products to that, things like Bitcoin. I think this level of composability, this level of being able to control positions on other chains from a protocol on Flare is huge. It opens up really sizable things that you can do. I don't want to get the cart before the horse, but there are lots of things I've been thinking about. There are an awful lot of things that just don't exist in crypto, but should. Yesterday, Ripple bought a prime broker, a TradFi prime broker. One of the things that prime brokers do is they lend against positions that people have in the traditional markets. So you may have a large equity position. You may wish to take another position, and you go to your prime broker and you say, I want some margin against my equity position. Let's say your equity is Tesla, although that's probably a bad example at the moment. It's going to get liquidated. You might have been liquidated. But let's say you've got a large equity position. You need to have some cash to do something else. Go to your prime broker. They'll lend you money against the position you have, and they'll liquidate you if it goes below their threshold. Now that exists to an extent in DeFi, but it only exists really within protocols. It doesn't exist between protocols, and it doesn't exist between chains. I can't have a position on one perps DEX on one chain and leverage the equity in that position to take a position in another perps DEX on another chain. That's hugely inefficient. It means that capital in crypto is being used in a really inefficient manner, because I can't rehypothecate the value over here to somewhere over here. And in TradFi, I can. And aren't we meant to be more efficient in crypto? Aren't these meant to be better rails? But they're not. And so, what I think one of the first things I find really interesting about what we're building with protocol managed wallets is suddenly you can have a protocol that can control the position in multiple DeFi protocols on multiple chains. Suddenly, you can lend against that set of positions that are held by that protocol that exists on Flare. Suddenly, you can make crypto far more efficient. It can catch up with TradFi. And that's something that's interesting to me. So that's probably the biggest thing I'm trying to get built using protocol managed wallets, with the exception of F assets and XRP staking.
Amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. I know that fragmented liquidity is a problem in crypto in general. So
I mean, this isn't fragmented liquidity, just fragmented liquidity. This is a non-efficient use of existing assets. It's different to fragmented liquidity. This is like not being able to take a mortgage out on your house.
Okay.
Imagine the global housing market where you can't take a mortgage out on a house.
Yeah.
Not too many people would have homes.
Far less efficient.
Oh, that's good to know. So you have talked about institutions constantly. What does institutional ready mean to you?
It means that we have the protocols that they're going to want to use. It means that we have data that they're going to want to use. We're working with a number of entities at the moment around some specific things that they need with regards to they want to build a system that allows assets to be transferred at a certain point in time once some certain verification has happened. And that verification is real world verification. And it's real world verification by entities that are not in crypto. They're entities that are practically not in the internet age. An awful lot of industries in the world still just give you a PDF when they certify something. Give you a good example. Let's say you've got 500 tons of coal. Coal has 20 different grades. It can also get wet. And suddenly your 500 tons of coal, if you dry it off, is actually only 300 tons of coal because it's carrying a large amount of water. And so in the process of these kind of trades, that along the way, there are many certification points. The problem is, and we would like to be able to get these trades on chain. We would like to be able to allow individuals to lend their money to finance these trades, but we don't have the data. And so those certification bodies that I was talking about, today they just give you a PDF. The hell do I do with a PDF with a blockchain? Very, very hard. So straddling those problems is the really interesting part of our work that we are figuring out in conjunction with our protocols, the FTC and AI. This AI can read the PDF.
That's amazing. Thanos, so is there any alpha about upcoming DeFi apps or partnerships that you can share with us?
Yeah, it's funny that you ask. I can't share just yet. But I think we have some pretty exciting stuff coming to market, I would say within the next month or so, that will make the retail user experience a lot easier, the institutional user experience a lot easier. And we're going to be running programs for people to participate within our DeFi ecosystem that will have some of the best yields around for people that want to participate. So I can't necessarily hard launch a partnership right now, but I would say stay tuned, and I think people will be genuinely pretty surprised as to what we have coming to market over the next couple months outside of just our regular product stuff that we've been talking about here.
Awesome. Can't wait. Ace, should we shift to protocol managed wallets?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and dive a little deeper into that topic. So, Philippe, if you don't mind, man, how do PMWs affect security and the overall user experience? The idea of not bridging or not having to traditionally bridge an asset is kind of foreign to people. So, would you mind giving us some color around that?
Yeah, so like Hugo already said, the main idea of protocol managed wallet is for a dApp, for a smart contract on Flare to be able to directly interact with some other chain, which up until now you had to do using bridge, which means that you need to have a bunch of liquidity on both sides. There's a bridging risk, you have to wait. Don't even get me started on the user experience on what going through multiple bridge hoops would look like. And I mean, we have bridge aggregators just because of this, because bridges as such can get problematic. So with protocol managed wallet, what we offer, what the main point is that we have a set of TEs controlling a wallet, a perfectly normal and you owned account on another chain. And we specifically initially focused on chains that do not support smart contracts, specifically XRPL and Bitcoin, which allows you to initiate a transaction on Bitcoin directly from Flare's smart contract. So you issue an event, this gets picked by the Flare system protocol, so by the all validators, and then they relay this message to this multi-sig that is controlling the wallet on the other side, and it's application specific, and you can execute any transaction you want without having to worry about all these things. Is there somebody bridging in between and so on? And then you have a nice wallet that's fully abstracted away for the dev developer, and for a user, it's pretty much an immediate execution on the other side. So the experience is that as soon as I operate on Flare, as soon as I do something on Flare, boom, I can withdraw Bitcoins by just creating a simple Flare transaction, and that gets picked up. And this is pretty much the first step toward the full chain abstraction. So a wallet controlling Bitcoin, a wallet controlling some address on XRPL, specifically for F assets, and then you can have a wallet on a EVM chain when you can execute some additional stuff, and this ties nicely into this cross-chain lending. So the ability to have a protocol own stuff across different chains, but still know that this is specifically tied to you. And as always, the security is paramount. So we designed this so that each wallet is independent, depends on a specific protocol, so you can't steal from another one. And then you can obviously configure the sizes, you can obviously configure some additional parameters that get checked. But importantly, the wallets themselves are really, really light. So there's no RPC inside them. We make them as light as possible so that all the security assumptions that are inside that piece of code are really minimized to pretty much just signing a transaction. That's the main idea, as in being able to abstract away a fully foreign chain by just saying, okay, create this transaction, give it a parameter on which chain to operate, and that's it. Everything else is handled by us.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, from a user perspective, it'll be nice not to have to worry about what chain I'm conducting activities on to interact with whatever assets that I may be interested in. And, just being able to just go and proceed however I want. That'll be pretty nice. But, just a follow-up question.
I mean,
Go ahead, Hugo.
Theoretically, someone could build a super app on Flare that lets you basically interact with any chain you want and any DeFi protocol on that chain.
Awesome.
It's a lot of work,
I was
but it's a hell of a thing.
what would that take?
Yeah, yeah. And I think
it's just smart contract code, but it's feasible, and I think feasible for let's say 3 or 4 chains and their main use cases. You would start there, but ultimately you'd want to add many other chains.
absolutely. I expect, with chain abstraction, my grandparents to be able to do this without thinking too much. And right now they can't. My phone is exploding with questions right now from friends, family, asking how do they interact with chains. So improving the user experience will be major for adoption. So that's awesome. But Philippe, just a follow-up question to the PMW and how they affect security and user experience. Could you provide a little color on how they will also impact scalability and potentially latency? You mentioned having to wait on traditional bridges, and sometimes they can take forever. So how do PMWs kind of improve that level of experience, if you will?
So the main idea is that PMW relies on the signals provided by the data providers. So each instruction that gets encoded on Flare and gets emitted on Flare is then checked by the Flare system protocols entities, so the data providers. They sign it and they push it to a TE that's dedicated to that specific wallet or that specific set of wallets. So instead of having to wait for the full chain synchronization, instead of having to wait for the RPC to sync there, you have a set of entities that are already heavily invested in the chain, that already are checking everything that's happening, that are indexing everything, and they quickly respond and push these messages across to the wallets themselves, and then they execute immediately. So there's no waiting time, there's no waiting for liquidity to happen. The messages are, I wouldn't say instant, you still have to wait for the, I don't know, on Bitcoin you still have to wait for the block to be mined, but the transaction gets in the mempool as soon as the data providers see the event being emitted, check it, and push it through.
Okay. That sounds simple enough. How exactly do PMWs enhance the security and economic stability of F assets, V2 in particular?
Yeah, so within the F assets V1, you had agents. Agents had to collateralize their underlying XRP, their underlying Bitcoin, so that we were sure that they were not going to run away with it. So we used the FDC to always observe them, and we used the FDC to prove that they didn't do anything bad. With the protocol managed wallet, we're abstracting that away, and there is no end entity controlling that wallet anymore. It's getting controlled directly by the network. So whatever the smart contract on the F asset side is saying should be done, gets done immediately, and nothing else can get out of this wallet. So the main thing is that now we can get rid of the unnecessary collateral and make this whole system much more capital efficient. And this means that both the limits to how much we can mint and the things that we can allow this XRP or the FXRP or F Bitcoin to do gets expanded by a lot. So you can now stake the FXRP because there is no capital cost for the underlying, because everything is secured by the stake in the Flare system anyway. So everything now gets secured by the staked Flare to the validators and the protocol providers instead of having an additional pools that you need to provide for the agent. So that's the main thing. So we're abstracting this away, and also because there is no feedback loop now, making sure that the agents can redeem in such a time, we can make the redemptions much faster because they're immediately executed. You're not waiting for some third party to do this for you. As soon as the protocol emits an event, this redemption should be done. The funds should leave the protocol managed wallet address of the F assets. They do it. There's no waiting here. So that's also a much improved user experience. And there's no full agents because there's no such a thing as full anymore. It's always available because we're keeping this wallet directly under control by us.
All of this sounds amazing.
Us being the network here.
Yeah, obviously.
Right. Thanks for the clarification, Hugo. But PMWs, they sound like, a huge innovation in something that could really change the industry standard in terms of how, we do cross-chain related activities, or even change how we look at bridging. So with that being said, are PMWs going live soon? Like, can you share any milestones that will lead to PMWs being readily available for all to use? Because this sounds amazing.
So maybe I'll let Hugo answer a bit more detailed, but maybe just for the first use case, the F assets, when we're going to use them to control these pools, we're going to do a staged rollout. As always, the security is paramount. So we're going to first go through the F assets version 1.1 with the core vault, enabling a much bigger efficiency, enabling much faster turnover of the assets, and then slowly upgrade to PMWs by making sure that we keep the interface the same. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be providing the ability to interact with protocol managed wallets, and the F assets will go through this interface, but we're going to slowly upgrade to it to make sure that every piece of this is properly tested, and we know that both the attestations from T's that this is running on are correct, that we properly test them, that we know that the interface is okay, that people that are going to use it later know exactly how to use it, and that we're not going to change it much over, and so on. So that's a staged rollout just to make sure that all the pieces go together correctly. So it's a protocol, it's a building block for everybody else to build on top of it at a later point. So we really want to make sure that the interfaces are frozen and that both the user experience and the developer experience that will be then after the protocol is out is really going to be very nice and pretty straightforward without minor changes at the end. Maybe Hugo if you want to
Yeah.
add.
In terms of timing, I mean, I don't want to give timing. I think I said previously late summer. I think we're still within that window. It's a very big, it's a very important protocol. It has, a lot of work that needs to go into it to make it absolutely secure. And as Philip said, we're going to be doing a phase rollout, Coston, then Songbird, then Flare. But I'm very hopeful that it'll be relatively soon.
Yeah, I respect not giving exact dates.
To put it this way, it's an awful lot easier to build than building a blockchain, 2 data protocols, and then a bridge protocol. So that's what we've built so far, and it's all working pretty well. So it's a lot lower hurdle, but it's incredibly important to get it right.
Absolutely. And I'm sure at the end of the day, people will appreciate the attention to detail and making sure security is first in mind, especially when dealing with people's hard-earned money. So totally respect that. But amongst I understand that you guys eventually landed on the solution of protocol managed wallets, but I'm sure there had to be some level of evaluation process that you and the team went through, Philippe or Hugo, whoever wants to answer this. So what process did you guys go through to eventually, come to the conclusion that PMW or protocol managed wallets was in fact the way to go?
So we were exploring how to make the process more efficient. The holy grail is obviously this thing. So have a private key to another blockchain in a secure enclave. And the exploration was, okay, are we going to use some additional technology? Are we going to use some of existing networks that already manage the secrets? But the main thing that popped out was pretty much that the same infrastructure that will be needed to properly secure a private key, to properly shard it, to then properly have it backup in the case that T is shut down, to have all these really in full layers of compatibility and full layers of backup. It really turned out that if you're gonna build this, if you're gonna take this from someone else's build, whatever you want to build on top of this is gonna be difficult. So it pretty much went hand in hand with, okay, we need somewhere to store the private keys securely for additional chains, and we need somewhere to execute a compute on demand that can also be done on private data and can do something. So this built on TEs and having the ability to execute a compute on demand in a secure enclave then went together hand in hand. So, okay, we need to execute compute on demand for large language models. This was pretty much the introduction to Flare AI Kit that we're going to probably hear a bit later. And TE Managed Wallet was pretty much the next thing that you're going to do. Okay, so instead of running a model, we're going to run a very specialized application that is going to be really toned down to just do a specific thing, guard the private key, and that one can directly be used to allow us to interact with other chains. So slowly moving toward arbitrary computation, but then specializing it to do just one thing and do it very secure.
Awesome. So moving on, how exactly is Flare encouraging developers to use protocol managed wallets instead of, those more traditional solutions for bridging?
So currently it's really in the development phase. Once we have the full spec out and we know that the interfaces are frozen, we're going to be heavily promoting this as a way to interact with specifically, firstly, non-smart chains, and as a way to connect external data, Web2 data, the interactions you would get from actions on top of Web2 data to do something on another chain. So pretty much we're going to be going very hard into this ability to execute a simple transaction on Bitcoin or XRP Ledger, depending on what exactly happened on some Web2 data source that we can also bridge via FDC. So a simple insurance, and here is, instead of just paying out natively, you can now directly use another protocol and pay out this somewhere else to a user that can be really abstracted away of all this complexity.
Awesome. And well, I see you have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Hugo.
Give you some other color on that. The way we're working at the moment is where we kind of conceive of protocols and then we go and find developers to build them. So XRP staking, we'll use protocol managed wallets. In fact, it was protocol managed wallets that got the party that is building it, and they're a really great party to build it, over the line in terms of building it. Because I went to them, I said, I want you to build this protocol. I want you to build staking for XRP. And they're like, yeah, everyone wants to do that. Like, it's great, but like, how do we do it? Protocol managed wallets got them over the line. There's at least 2, if not 3 other protocols building protocols alongside our build of protocol managed wallets, using protocol managed wallets. Because when we talk to developers about it, they're like, yeah, this is really cool.
So this might be a little bit further along the line, but do you think that at some point, like let's say Bitcoin maxi that doesn't want to leave Bitcoin would be able to leverage this technology without leaving the Bitcoin network?
You'd never be not leaving the Bitcoin network. I mean, you'd always be running a protocol on Flare.
My question is, like, can you run it from Bitcoin? Like at some point that you're like, okay, Bitcoin, you send it? No. Okay, good. That was
it relies on Flare's consensus. That's why we're calling it. That's why we say it extends Flare's consensus onto other chains. We can't leverage Bitcoin's consensus in order to make a signature in the protocol managed wallets.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay, so XRP staking has been a hot topic. Hugo, you did an amazing spaces just the other day with the XRP community spreading the word. So has there been any challenges related to building a staking solution for XRP? And would you mind kind of giving us some color around those?
So we're not building the staking solution. It's being built by an external partner, which we chose because of their credibility in the space, their extreme knowledge of DeFi, and their customer relationships. They have access to very, very large amounts of customers who are sitting on extremely large amounts of XRP, and they went and they did a poll of their customers, and before they said, yeah, we'll build this, and their customers are like, yeah, we really want this. So that's that's how that's getting built. Obviously, the hurdle really for that is they're going to use FXRP v1.1 to start with. The thing that got them interested was protocol managed wallets.
Got you. Okay. And you just provided us that you specifically, Flare specifically, is not building the XRP staking solution. So yeah, I'm sure these other questions won't really work out. But let's go ahead and switch gears into a technical dive into, trusted execution environments. For those that may not be technologically privy, this sounds like a very new concept, but from what I could understand, TEEs aren't new, but why are they valuable for blockchain now? Why are we starting to see a trend with other protocols, not just the Flare network, utilizing or looking to TEEs for building out different solutions?
Yeah. So the basic idea here is that TEEs have existed for some time now. And they've existed primarily in hardware specific use cases. Like you take the example of digital rights management, DRM, or in terms of like biometric authentication. And the basic properties of the TEs that were required were isolation, confidentiality, and verifiability. Basically, even if the rest of my system is compromised, I don't want any data that's within the TE to get compromised. And because this is a hardware-based solution, it iterates and it evolves, with time. And what we've seen in the past decade is basically like a 0 to 1 jump in both the robustness of TEs and the functionality that they offer. So with the latest generation of TEs, for example, Intel, TDX, you can take an entire Docker container and run that natively on the TE itself. And this is sort of a stark distinction to previous generations where you had, a combination of a trusted element and an untrusted element, and you had to then, modify your code to work around this trusted, untrusted approach. There was a complex message passing protocol, sort of that worked in between, and just sort of the surface area for making mistakes was significantly higher. So with the recent generation, sort of all those, the hardware challenges have been solved, and this is something that's only going to get better with time.
Awesome. Awesome. So, there's been different technologies raised in the past, like zero knowledge proofs, to help with, certain types of transactions, especially pertaining to privacy. So, could you, quickly do a compare or contrast of TEs versus zero knowledge proofs and why Flare decided to go down the route of trusted execution environments?
Yeah. So this is actually quite a deep question, but I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. So one thing I really need to clarify here is that when most people say zero knowledge proofs, they're not actually confidential. So your data is not protected in that particular case. The code is not protected in that particular case. They're using ZKPs for something known as succinctness, like to generate effectively smaller proofs. And that's what you see, for example, on Ethereum L2s, which use ZKPs, which are posted on Ethereum L1. What TEs give you is effectively isolation, confidentiality, and verifiability. And they do this without sacrificing the scaling of the system. Like, for example, if I wanted to run some private ML inference on a ZKP, that's basically not possible. I would have to create a ZK circuit with perhaps 1 million nodes in it. And there's some complex synchrony assumptions involved as well. And it's basically just impossible. So ZK can be used, but for very simple use cases. With TEs, because they're sort of inherently scalable, you can actually, the design space for what kinds of applications you can build is significantly larger. And in terms of performance, you're talking about a difference of somewhere between 1,000x faster to 10,000x faster between TEs and ZKPs.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. So I
Yeah.
probably would have went trusted execution environment route as well. With that being said, so pivoting over to the Flare AI kit, amazing hackathon. I appreciated seeing the builders that participated in the hackathon, explaining their product or their project, their thought processes going into building that product or project. So what exactly is the Flare AI kit for those that may not necessarily know, and what exactly makes it unique?
Yeah. So the Flare AI kit is basically an open source SDK for building verifiable AI agents on Flare. So what is an AI agent? So everyone is quite familiar with AI as a whole. You see it pretty much every day. There are innovations going on all the time. What agents do is they leverage that AI to take actions in the real world. Like, for example, I want to use an AI system, but I want to use it to operate a DEX, right? I want to abstract the interface for a DEX through the AI system. I can leverage it to do that. So that's an example of an agent, right? And what Flare AI Kit does is it effectively simplifies the development process for creating AI agents on Flare. And it does a couple of key factors. So one part is verifiability. So you can now take your AI agent, you can generate a proof that, hey, this agent is running this specific code base, and I can verify that proof on chain on Flare. It also allows you to inject Flare specific context. So context is basically what prevents LLMs from hallucinating and saying anything. It allows you to inject Flare specific context, things like documentation, ecosystem, and so on and so forth. And it also allows you to interact specifically with ecosystem protocols. So there are a set of connectors. And if I want to, let's say, make a trade on SparkDex, or I want to make a trade on Kinetic, so it will have ecosystem connectors that will basically allow the AI agent to operate and make that particular trade. And yeah, just one point about the hackathon. We were actually really amazed. There were many young students over there. They're all, very hungry and very interested in building applications on AI. And we're very impressed actually with the quality of submissions, that we received. Like they were actually like really, really both very good ideas and also very good in their execution as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. When I was going after my university degree, I wish blockchain and artificial intelligence was as prominent or becoming prominent like it is now. The courses around those topics were not offered, so I'm kind of salty about that. But it's amazing to see, universities change their tune and really, have that open arm towards the technologies, these emerging technologies. So that's pretty cool. Um, so related to the Flare AI kit, I'm pretty sure you guys got feedback from the submissions from the students who participated in the hackathon. What exactly is the roadmap for, not just developing further development of the Flare AI kit, but also integrating any type of advancements or suggestions that may come from, those hackathon participants or anybody that may be, developing with the Flare AI kit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Flare AI kit is fully open source. You can access it on GitHub. I don't recommend using it in production at the moment because it's still in the early alpha stages and functionality is constantly being added. But what we're doing basically with the winning hackathon teams, the top builders that we identified at the Flare X Google Cloud Hackathon, we're fast tracking them into the grants program. And there's kind of two tracks over there. So the first part is going to be focused on building their own product on Flare, in the case of, for example, Scribe Chain or 2DeFi. And the second part is going to be making contributions back into the Flare AI kit, adding more functionality, making it more robust, giving new features to it. So there's kind of two pathways over there about how the roadmap is going to progress.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, related to the Flare AI kit, I'm not necessarily a full-fledged developer myself. I'm kind of like by association. It was actually surprising how easy it was to get the Flare AI kit up and running and, really starting to understand how, the processes work, adding different LLMs, as far as, aggregating responses from those. So, what helped make the development of the original Flare AI kit, at least what's available now, as easy as possible? Was that the main focus, or did it just happen like that?
No, it was a key focus. It was absolutely a key focus. I mean, the thing about tools like this is if you don't make it easy for developers to use, very simply, they're just not going to use it, right?
Right.
Developers are low on time usually, and they're low on patience. And I can say that as one myself. Like if something takes too long, if it takes over 10 minutes for me to figure out what the hell's going on, I'm not going to spend more time on it, right?
Right.
So it was a key focus to try and keep it, as easy as possible. It's like you modify this one configuration file and you can, run your agent.
Right. No, that's awesome. I mean, it just took me a Sunday afternoon. So yeah, I agree with making things as easy as possible. And I work with developers in my day job, so they do get impatient if things are not as straightforward and simple to use. So I get where you're coming from that point. Now, going back to more hackathon related things, we watched the live stream you had, and one particular project stood out to us was the 2DeFi project. Do you know, or were you able to discuss with those students or those developers of that project what had inspired that idea? Because that was pretty novel.
Yeah, I did spend some time, discussing with them, like sort of what was their, kind of motivation for building what they had built. Um, and if you kind of think about it, it logically makes a lot of sense, but no one seems to have really addressed it. Like let's say I have some, stock portfolio. I'm holding that portfolio in, Robinhood or Fidelity or one of these applications. I'm interested in DeFi, right? But I know nothing about it. So there's a very big knowledge gap that I have between where I currently am and where I want to be, right? How can we smoothen out this knowledge gap? How can we make it so that, hey, I can take my existing risk metrics that I've applied to my current stock portfolio and map that into a DeFi strategy, right? And that's basically where 2DeFi comes in, because the name, as the name suggests, like it's TradFi to DeFi. It allows you to like screenshot your, TradFi portfolio, runs it through Gemini image processing, which analyzes it, figures out, which stocks, which proportions, what kind of risk metric this particular user is interested in, and then maps that to like a DeFi strategy on Flare.
No, that's awesome. That makes things really easy, really straightforward. But given that you said it logically made sense, but no one's really built a solution for it. Can a project like 2DeFi only be built on Flare?
Yeah, so 2DeFi is built on the Flare AI kit. And the
Right.
Flare AI kit basically has all the deep integrations with Flare. As I mentioned before, for example, the context of interacting with blockchains, the connectors for different ecosystem protocols. So realistically, no. If they're using the Flare AI kit, they can only build on Flare.
Gotcha. Well, appreciate you answering those questions. Let's go ahead and transition over to some community questions, if you guys don't mind. And with that, Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah. So, any updates on how this is coming from the community? Any updates on how tokens from the Flare Foundation and Flare VC funds are being used?
Yep. We use them for grants. Obviously, the foundation also markets the markets Flare, has a large marketing budget. We use them for grants. We use them for RFPs, these kind of things. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Are there any plans for protocol level governance changes, on-chain voting, DAOs, tools like that?
All of that can be built on Flare, and Flare already has a really sophisticated governance system that you can access easily.
Okay, this is an interesting one. How do protocol managed wallets stay decentralized when governed by Flare's protocols?
Not sure I understand the question. Protocol managed wallets are responding and are built to only respond to a valid output from Flare. So effectively, they are conveying the decentralization of Flare to another place. Protocol managed wallet can't not sign. It can't. The only thing that can happen to a protocol managed wallet is that a TEE can go offline. But we use multiple TEs and we have TE backups. So a way to back up the keys from a TE to another TE. So ultimately, there isn't really a decentralization concern there. Philip, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
No, not really. So protocol managed wallet is just another thing that responds to events emitted on Flare's chain. And to forge an event emitted on chain, you have to forge the whole consensus on chain. So in effect, it can't respond to anything else but a valid block being mined on chain. And it will respond to it in exactly that way because data providers have to then respond in a specific way. So it's not like it's controlled by the Flare Foundation or governance itself. The entities that operate it are the same entities that also mine blocks and the same entities that provide data. So it's ingrained directly into the chain itself. So it's not, governance does not have any oversight over it, but it is true that the specific contract that owns the wallet can do anything with it wants. We're just relaying that message from a contract to another chain. If there's a smart contract error in the person that has implemented their specific wallet, yeah, sure, that can be. There's no decentralization there. It's fully dependent on that application. But as soon as the event is emitted, you can't really fake it.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so if I understand correctly, at some point there's going to be FXRP and staked XRP on the Flare network. Why would someone choose one versus the other?
Staked XRP gives you yield.
And FXRP on its own doesn't.
It's not.
So, but you wouldn't stake unless you want to stake into a specific provider, right? So, if you just wanted to use your XRP on Flare, you would use FXRP, and then if there's somebody that you want to stake specifically, you stake it.
So the difference is staked XRP gives you yield. You can still be an LP in a DEX with FXRP against any other token. You can still borrow against your XRP, borrow dollars to buy other tokens or realize some liquidity without selling your XRP. You can still use your XRP as collateral in perps, DEXs, these kind of things. But ultimately, I think there's going to be a large market between XRP and liquid staked XRP, whereby people use both tokens in order to trade in and out of positions.
Awesome. So this is going to come from a developer. Ethereum EVM updates involve hard forks. How does Flare? What does Flare do with those updates, those hard forks on the EVM sidechain?
So the underlying nodes that we use are a fork of Avalanche, and we continuously upgrade the nodes with upgrades that are coming directly to the Avalanche, and specifically EVM upgrades are coming to the Avalanche's C chain, that is the main chain that Flare uses. So whenever an Ethereum upgrades something, as soon as this gets pushed to Avalanche, we do our due diligence and then integrate those upgrades directly into Flare. So currently, we're catching up with the current implementation, and we expect most of the new Ethereum features to be done quite quickly. So yeah, it's we're pretty much getting changes from the Avalanche.
Okay. Some community members are highly, again, this is coming from some of our FTSO friends, of looking at the validators and the validators who are working on Flare versus on Songbird. And so there's some major, I guess you'd say they have some concerns about, the Songbird network in general, and would like kind of how you think you might be able to get the validators to participate in both networks more consistently.
Well, I think at the moment, we're still using Songbird very heavily for testing of F assets, and then we'll be testing a protocol managed wallets. Controlling the validators for now, we would love to decentralize Songbird as much as possible, but ultimately, we can only do so much at a particular time. We're very focused on getting the protocols up and running, getting liquidity into the protocols. And then, we will focus on adding staking, validator staking to Songbird.
Gotcha. So it's on the path, but you're just overwhelmed with other projects.
It's on the path, but it's just it's a big project, and not to be taken lightly. And it doesn't add huge amounts of value at this point in time. It's a nice to have, not a must have.
I can understand the difference there. Definitely understand the difference there. But yeah, so definitely, like I said, obviously there's several validators who are really big on both, and it's one of their biggest, I guess, concerns, I would say, is talking to them.
I understand that, but there's a problem of having every organization has limited resources. We have things we're focusing on.
Absolutely, I can respect that. So, when will community-driven governance be enabled on mainnet?
It'll be enabled when we proceed we're still technically in beta. And that's really once we get the bridges up, and we have sufficient liquidity and feel comfortable that the community is large enough and diverse enough for community governance to be effective.
Awesome. So, is anybody else? That is the end of our community questions. Thank you guys so much. Do you guys have any other additional questions, Ace, Whale?
No, I think we've got as much as we can out of them. So I definitely appreciate you guys joining us this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are. This is major. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a good day, guys.
You guys have a good day.
Friday.
See ya.
See ya. Bye.